What if purpose isn't something you find, but something you create, one surrender at a time? Today's guest is a visionary who shaped the world of design, built one of the first podcasts in existence, and turned a backyard garden into a profound metaphor for healing and humanity. Debbie Millman joins us for a deeply personal, inspiring conversation about creativity, trauma, love, and letting go. This one's not just about design, it's about how we design a life that matters. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and executive coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today, I am privileged to be speaking with Debbie Millman. Debbie is an illustrator, author, educator, curator, editorial director of printmag.com, and host of the podcast Design Matters. Debbie has been named one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company and one of the most influential designers working today by Graphic Design USA, a Women of Influence by Success Magazine, and one of the Queer 40 by Lesbians Who Tech. Design Matters is one of the first and longest running podcasts in the world, running for 20 years. In addition to winning multiple awards, Design Matters has been listed on over 100 best podcast lists, including one of the best podcasts in the world by Business Insider and Vanity Fair. Debbie is the author of multiple books on design, brand thinking, and creativity. And her latest book is A Love Letter to a Garden, which is a beautiful book we'll be talking about today, which includes recipes from her wife and best-selling author, Roxane Gay. Also, and finally, Debbie is also currently working with Law and Order SVU actor and activist Mariska Hargitay's Joyful Heart Foundation to eradicate sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, and the rape kit backlog. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. It's really wonderful to be here.
I cut out so much stuff to get through that bio because there is so much, and there was so much
I would have given
that
you condensed one.
I want to say, because you have done so much in your career, and you are still producing, designing, creating across modalities. And one of the places I wanted to start was, what led you to design?
A lot of circuitous pathways. I was the arts and features editor of my student newspaper when I was a senior in college. And one of the responsibilities of the editors of each section was to also put the paper together, i.e., design. And so I inadvertently had to learn on the job how to design and put together a newspaper section, which ultimately became as exciting, if not more exciting for me at the time in working in that role. I loved the design aspect of putting the paper together and would spend as much time looking for the right photos or taking photos myself or creating illustrations to be able to bring the section to life, and thus began a career in design.
Was there a moment or time when you realized you saw things a bit differently?
Still waiting for that moment.
That hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet.
I mean, it's a goal to be able to create original work or original thoughts. Not sure if I've made that leap into that level, but still working on it.
Do you ever have these, like, I sometimes have these moments where I see things or see something coming or experience something, and I've just had this assumption that everyone sees it the same way. Like, it's been this long term, like, oh, we all actually don't see things the same way. And I have to imagine with your visual and creative skill, things pop to you that seem automatic that others might not see.
Well, one thing that I tend to do almost spontaneously upon meeting most people is associate who they look like in my head. And so I'm constantly asking my wife, oh, doesn't so and so look like so and so? Or doesn't that person look like that person? Or don't they have the same nose? Or don't they have the same eyebrows? And she often will say no. But I see something that I think is there. Um,
Yeah.
that's the best example.
Yeah.
I tend to be somebody that looks for patterns in everything,
Yes.
probably as a way to control what is around me. But I still do think that my associations between the visual look of one person and another is more accurate than most.
Yes. I drive my wife crazy with the same thing.
Oh,
I'm
good.
always uh she looks like her, he looks like him. Doesn't
Yep.
that remind you of this? And I do the pattern thing too. And where she is, I'll say good about grounding me is say, can you just let that person be that person?
Oh, I love that line. That's a great
Yeah,
line.
yeah, yeah. So it gets me right back to the present. With your design, this pattern recognition and seeking brain, what was there anything noteworthy for you in school, going through school, as at it fitting, it not fitting, doing well,
Oh.
excelling?
Um, well, I've always been an overachiever, but not for the sake of overachieving. It was more to feel like I was working hard enough to validate being alive. And
Mm,
also because of a really, really traumatic childhood, I used productivity and achievement to mask or try and help dilute feelings of self-loathing and being
mhm.
damaged or less than, which I think almost anyone will tell you after decades of trying to do it that way doesn't really work.
Right, and I wanted to hit this topic, and since you brought it up, we can talk about it now if you are comfortable. You wrote a powerful op-ed piece on your traumatic experiences and the impact it had on you, um, and and just feeling so alone, right? And so isolated in this experience, and this has led to your amazing advocacy work that we talked about.
With joyful heart,
Yeah.
yes.
So would you mind sharing?
No, trigger alert for those that are
Yes.
listening. This is
Yes.
a story of sexual abuse. I was sexually abused for 4 years as I was growing up between the ages of 9 and 13. And at the time, it was the very early 70s, pre Roe v. Wade. And I was unaware of the epidemic of abuse that had been occurring in our society and our culture in the world, because I was so little and I had not been exposed to any advocacy or news at all in this regard, and thought I was the only person in the world it was happening to. Only realized that I wasn't through a letter in the advice column of my local newspaper where somebody wrote in and said that they had had a similar experience, and I cut the letter out and put it under my bed, feeling solidarity with this anonymous writer. But in any case, sometime between the ages of 12 and 13, I thought that I might be pregnant. I didn't know at the time that when you first got your period, it didn't happen sequentially every month after that. Um, and thought that I'd have to kill myself if I was pregnant. And then Roe v. Wade became law, and I thought, oh, I might have a way out if I need one. And ultimately, I wasn't pregnant, thank God. And um, eventually, my mom divorced my stepfather, who was doing this all to me. And a bit later on, I did tell my parents, um, with mixed results, but that's another story for another day. And have spent the last 50 or so years working on healing and recovery. A lot of that is done by the advocacy work that I do with Mariska Hargitay and the advocacy work we do with the Joyful Heart Foundation, which is,
Mhm.
one of the great experiences of my life to be able to do that type of work.
Thank you for sharing and the say the courage to put this out there. And when you wrote your op-ed piece, was there what was that experience like for you? And I imagine multiple emotions and part of the healing process as well.
I wrote the first draft on an airplane coming back from Europe, and my wife was online and said, "They did it. The Supreme Court did it. They overturned Roe v. Wade." And I don't know that any advocate or pro choice person could have believed that this would happen. And I was so angry, terrified, heartbroken that I just wrote the first draft right then and there because had I been pregnant at the time I had been assaulted, if Roe v. Wade had not been legal, if that had not been made a law in the United States, I don't know if I'd be here. And had circumstances been different. And it was terrifying to think that we were losing a codified right that had been 50 years on the books. And so it was with a lot of very mixed emotions that I wrote that piece.
Mm. What did you get back?
I got back a lot of support and camaraderie.
Hmm.
I didn't really write it to get anything other than to provide a point of view, a first person point of view that perhaps had not been considered, or the ramifications would be reconsidered, given the change of heart by the Supreme Court.
Hmm.
Still waiting. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Um, Purpose driven. Uh,
mm,
that is something that as I had been preparing for our conversation and looking into all your projects, and what you just said earlier too about it just seems there's a lot of purpose in what drives you.
mhm. It's complicated, but purpose and um, meaning, search
Meaning,
for meaning. Yeah.
yes, yes. We'll talk about that in your book shortly because you pose a lot of there's a lot of philosophical, just like little wisdom bombs that kind of go in there and make you just go, I just like the pages are so beautiful and um at times simple and complex at the same time. So there's just so much pause as it really seemed like this latest project is an exploration of the meaning of life, the circle of life, all in the backdrop of COVID. Um,
Hmm.
so you're there's I sense a lot of depth and complexity with you and your work.
I think that's probably true for everybody, but
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Um, Design matters, which of course it does. This podcast, which was that you were doing before it was called podcasts, what were webcasts back then? What was it when you started?
Well, I wasn't doing video, I was just doing audio. So it was just a show on an online radio network that was live every Friday at 3 p.m. ET. And I would talk to designers about designing, very inside baseball. And did that actually for 100 episodes on the radio network. But after a few months of broadcasting on the radio, I started to upload my files to iTunes so that people could listen without having to be live
Hmm.
on their computers in a specific place at a specific time. And it inadvertently became one of the first and now longest running podcasts, continuously running since 2005. And enjoying it every step of the way.
How has it has the secret sauce been the same? Because as a creator, I imagine you are constantly creating, but I'm wondering there's some through lines I'm sure that are just like the staples, and then there is the evolution as well over 2 decades.
The show started as a show about design, hence the name Design Matters. And I was interviewing first and foremost friends and colleagues that I knew in the design business. I had been working in the design business at that point for over 20 years. And I reached out just to my immediate network. And then that network allowed me to go further into their networks to be able to get recommendations from people that I knew somebody that I wanted to interview. And that is pretty much the way the first 100 episodes worked. Then I moved the show off Voice America in 2009 and brought it to Design Observer, one of the first design blogs. And at that point, one of the prerequisites in doing that was to improve the quality of the audio, which I didn't know how to do. So the late, great Bill Gentile, one of the co-founders of Design Observer, introduced me to Curtis Fox, a podcast producer that he knew that was working for the New Yorker and the Poetry Foundation. And he began working with me. He's been my producer ever since.
Hmm.
And then I would say from 2009 to 2012 or 13, I started slowly to expand the type of guests that I had, an occasional scientist or a lot more writers, some performers. And then by 2012 through now, I would say it's been less about the design work that my guests have accomplished or created and more how the world's most creative people design the arc of their lives and
Mm,
create the
yeah.
careers that they have, pardon me, and the work that they make. And so it's a bit of re-engineering based on the title, which I didn't really want to change only because in my heart of hearts, I'm still a brand consultant
You
and
are a
there's
brander.
a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
equity in the name, but it's probably also something that's limited the reach if people think that it's about interior design or furniture design. I get a lot of PR requests from publicists that are looking to schedule their guests on the show that are furniture makers or tile makers or sofa makers. And I don't have the bandwidth to interview everybody in that realm, but I certainly do respect it. But I know that the name is what gives them pause.
Yeah. The number of visionaries and luminaries that you have interviewed is it's just quite impressive. I was just imagining a compilation. I mean, I know on your site you have the like sort of the best of, but I mean a compilation of wisdom um, from so many of our greatest thinkers. Just must be such an honor to sit with week in and
It's
week out.
the gift of a lifetime.
Hmm.
It really is, Dr. Dan.
Yeah.
It's nothing I could have ever imagined. I didn't grow up as a little girl thinking I want to be a podcast host when I grow up.
And if you did, that would be really forward thinking at the time. Um, so speaking of the design, so I listened to, I believe the last one in preparation with Dane Laffrey, an amazing set designer and Broadway, and you are a Broadway buff, right?
Yeah, I'm a
That,
Broadway wannabe.
yeah, yeah. Well, so we now have, so you interviewed on Maybe Happy Ending is the set, which of course has won all of these Tonys and everyone's talking about it. You said the best play you ever have seen. And so I didn't expect to get out of it what I ended up getting out of it. We are going to be visiting our son in Brooklyn in the summer. And I wrote everyone, I'm like, I've got the play we're going to go see, right? Like, it
Oh,
is
yeah.
unbelievable.
I will wait for your thank you note.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. You will get one. You will
I mean,
get
I
one.
have been going, the very first play I saw on Broadway was a chorus line, the original chorus line. And I have been seeing plays ever since for over 50 years. And it is among the very best I've ever seen. And it is because of the story, it is because of the music, it is because of the set. It's all just breathtakingly beautiful. And I cried through most of it. So beware.
Be prepared. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring tissues.
I'm up for a good cry. All right, let's move to your adventuredom. You are I'm curious as to how long you have been an adventurer, and I will just highlight a few of your exploits for everyone. Climbing Machu Picchu, the stairs of Portala Palace in Tibet, of course, the Great Barrier Reef, sunrises over the temples of Angkor Wat, climbed into the tombs and the pyramids of Giza, and of course, you lured Roxane into going to Antarctica on quite an adventure. So, where did this? Tell me about this.
Well, as a corporate executive, I spent many decades doing the business travel routine, getting up at 4 in the morning, getting to an airport, flying to a city, going to meetings, hopefully getting back home that night, more than likely having to stay over to do another meeting the next day. And I did that for years and years and years and years and years. And when I left my corporate job in 2016, I decided that the rest of my travel, as much as I could, um, would be to try to see as much of the world as possible. My business travel had taken me to every state except Montana, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. So those are the
Hmm.
states I still have to try and visit. I've seen every other. I've been all through Canada and most of Europe, but I had really spent very little time elsewhere. And so in 2016, I signed up for, or applied for, and signed up for a Nat Geo expedition around the world, which is where I saw a few of the stops that you just mentioned, and have been trying to see as much of the world as possible. Every year, I try to do an expedition of one sort. And expeditions are different than tourist travel in that you're really very physically engaged with the environment and also learning from Nat Geo fellows about where you are and meeting with scientists or architects or designers and linguists. It's been one of
Hmm.
my great joys.
That is living. That is living. And until you do these things, as you wrote, you and Roxane you knew Antarctica was far, but one has no idea how far and
It's really
cold,
far.
and
It's
like
really
to
far.
get
It's really
there.
cold. And I was there during the Antarctic summer months, December, and the southern hemisphere is summer that like we have in northern hemisphere, but December it switched. And so it was still the coldest cold I've ever felt. But it was glorious. The air is pure, it's pristine. The water is pristine. There's a lot of very serious protocols that one has to undertake in going on land to Antarctica from any boat because you're it's illegal to bring in any type of bacteria that you might be carrying. So your clothes are all examined, and you have to walk through all sorts of detergents, and it's quite serious. It was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. And that was even with not seeing what we were hoping to see in
Right.
going to Antarctica, which was the total solar eclipse of the sun, which was supposed to happen that December. We missed it due to cloud cover, but it was still really, really,
Mm,
really
mm,
glorious. Drake's Passage, which is what you have to boat through, sail through, takes 3 days. From the tip of Chile, where we departed, to the tip of Antarctica. And it's where all the oceans of the world converge. And so it's very bumpy.
mm.
And so it's really famous for its bumpiness and turbulence. And it was indeed exactly, if not more so, than what we anticipated. And but I it was a great gift to be able to experience that journey.
What's next?
Well, I think we had been doing quite a lot of travel in the last year because Roxanne's mom was very ill
Mm,
and was still able to travel. The last trip she was able to do from a wheelchair, and she passed
mm,
in February. And so right now, I think we're going to take a little break
yeah.
because we did 3 trips in the last year before her passing, which very grateful we had the opportunity to do. Um, but now we're in a sort of
Yes.
recharge mode.
Yes, that makes sense. A love letter to a garden. Your the pictures are beautiful.
Thank you.
Your handwriting is there so art it's there's something about your handwriting, and I know people have been wanting you to make it into a font for a very long time, which of course would take away from the uniqueness if everyone could have access to it. But there is something about your handwriting on the pages with the shapes and the contours and of course the messages. And I guess there's two ways to go with this. One is the origins of gardening, and the other is how you think of how you put it together, how you put the design of this photo gallery memoir of a particular time all together. So I'm going to leave it to you to take that wherever you want to go.
Well, you did pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how I could top that. Um, I was very surprised at the opportunity to create a book like this. I had started writing these types of visual stories during my first expedition to it was the around the world expedition, the first one that I did with Nat Geo in 2017. And I was just inspired to do these types of stories from a dear friend who is also a genius illustrator, Christoph Niemann, who does beautiful, beautiful visual stories and lots of covers for the New Yorker and books. And he's really a true genius. Hashtag MacArthur Foundation. And I was not only inspired to make these stories from Christoph, but also he had first told me about the Nat Geo expeditions. And so it was a bit of an homage to do the first one, but I liked doing it so much. I never thought, oh, I'm going to start doing these. I just did one as a thank you gift to Christoph for this opportunity, both artistically as well as actually, literally the journey that I was embarking on. And then loved doing it so much. I ended up doing a story for every country I went to on that trip, and have subsequently been documenting my travels through these visual stories ever since. And so I also was commissioned to do a story about my trip to Antarctica from a farm magazine. And so the acquisitions editor that approached me to do this book at Hachette had seen that work, and that's why she came and asked me to do this. I had also made some visual stories about gardening during COVID when the TED conference went
Hmm.
completely online, and they had seen these multiplicity of efforts that I had put out in the world, and asked me if I'd be interested in doing a book like that on gardening. And I was like, "Are you kidding?
Me?
Moi?" Um, and it was mostly because I would not have even considered myself book ready as a gardener. I had only had quite a lot of attempts and failures previous to my more recent experience when at home for months on end, I really started to garden in earnest and learn a great deal more. Um, so I wrote back and said I would be laughed out of off of the earth if I were to write a book as a how to gardener, or how to gardening book by this wannabe gardener. But I could do a book about my quest to become a gardener and what I've learned as a gardener through years of failure. And they were like, "That sounds good,"
Hmm.
and that's what I did.
Authentic. You're like, this I can do.
This I
Um,
could do. You want
I,
me to talk about failure?
yes,
This I could do.
yes. And I have a quote about that from you. Because again, there is so much wisdom in this beautiful gardening book. You wrote, as I've gotten older, I've been less comfortable doing anything I'm not good at. I worry I'll look ridiculous and embarrass myself. And how gardening motivated you to break this idea. And I want to give a little more life to this for everyone. It's so important for people to hear people like you say this. And what do I mean by people like you? Very accomplished individuals who, as I said at the outset of the show, I cut out over 50% of your accomplishments, which I wanted to talk about because there are so many and they're impressive. And I think so many of us, when we see others who have accomplished, we make these assumptions about who they are, their humanness, their invincibility. And we all have self-doubt. We all are fallible. We all have insecurity. And so for you to put that out there, I think it's really important for everyone to hear.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Thank you.
So how did gardening push you through those concerns, those worries, the potential embarrassment?
Well, there's no alternative. You either do it or you don't do it, and deal with the ramifications, because the one thing I can tell you about gardening is that you are unable to control mother nature. Like there's just
Mm,
no you're never going to win. And so once you are able to relinquish your control patterns with your obsessiveness to get something to work a certain way and realize that's all futile, and enjoy the process of the experience of gardening, everything else falls away. And for a control freak like me to be in a situation where there is no other alternative but to give that up in order to do this with any kind of joy at all is was really an important realization. So it was a
mhm,
combination of both asking for help and learning from people that were smarter and better at what they were doing than I was, respecting that you can only do so much to get something to grow or to successfully propagate or so on and so forth, and learning from that experience has helped in so many other areas of my life.
mhm. It's the ultimate act of surrender, right?
Yeah.
Like you can put your hands in the dirt, you can clip, you can fertilize, you can till. And other than that, there's a lot of other stuff that is completely out of our control.
And that is a perfect example of what it means to be alive. I started thinking so much about control in these experiences that I was having, and realized, we all know we can't control the world around us. That doesn't end well, those attempts. But we also can't really control everything that happens inside us. I don't know if later this afternoon I'm going to get a headache or a stomach ache. And
Mm-hmm.
if I
Mm-hmm.
do, what it would be like or how I'll get over it. Maybe I'll take some Advil or, there's so many things. I don't know if I'll, God forbid, get some sort of worse ailment. The day before I had an appendicitis, I didn't know I was going to have it. There's no way to predict what is going to happen in our own bodies. So if we can't predict what is going to happen in our own bodies tomorrow, and we can't predict what's going to happen in the world tomorrow, can't predict inside, we can't predict outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's like surrender
Yeah.
is indeed the right word. Just do the best we can and work on being able to manage and calibrate our own behavior.
I found your book to be a story and a metaphor of life and existence. As you talk through the process of gardening, as a person, the process of the plants and the nature, and then all the questions like there was no time before there was time, like that. We kind of start there, and that's when I had my first. Huh. I was reading your book on a plane traveling, and I just sat there with that page. And then we move on later to what does it mean to exist. I'm curious as to, as you were putting together the pictures and the story, how did all of these existential questions weave through them for you?
Well, it was more how I wove through the existential questions because these are things that I am obsessed with. I think about them all the time. In addition to being a wannabe gardener, I'm also a wannabe physicist, which I'm laughing for all the physicists out there that have just
Right.
that
Right.
have just spit out their coffee as they were laughing. But I'm not a mathematician or a scientist. I just think about these things all the time and wonder and wonder. And so this was just my visual expression of my daily conundrums that
Hmm.
I try to consider and answer.
You are a closet quantum physicist. You are just like you're in there, and it also made me think of, because I saw among the many amazing people you interviewed, Malcolm Gladwell. I remember when he said, I think he was doing a keynote at the American Psychology or Psychiatric Conference, and he was saying he's a wannabe psychologist, or like he's always wanted to do this. And when I think of someone like him who thinks the way he thinks, it's just funny to hear people again who are so accomplished in their field wanting to be something else, which again shows we all are like this. We all, like, what we do is what we do, and we all have more hopes and dreams beyond what we are currently.
Yeah.
Flora.
Laura.
I There was another. So tell us a little bit about your experience of flora, because the way you describe them, again, such a metaphor for what we are going through in our humanity now, and trying so many differences, so much unrest, so much conflict, and flora as a very varied species living harmoniously with one another.
Yeah. I mean, there are some invasive species, which I think is quite a metaphor
Yes.
as well. But for the most part, it's not a lot of fighting in a garden. Trees really look out for each other. Here comes my cat,
Hello.
one of my cats. See if the other one pops up. He sees a screen open and he's like, "Oh, I'm ready for my close up." Um, there's so much we can learn from nature. And it's such a terrible time in the world. And I'm so scared about what we're doing to each other. We're in a climate crisis, but we're also in a humanity crisis. And I'm at a point now where I'm actually feeling despair, true despair about what we're doing to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that we're fighting over whose ideas are right, who's right or who's wrong, or we're fighting over land, we're fighting over religion. Like, the earth didn't put up borders for certain people to live in certain places. Who are we to think that we're the ones that get to decide that? And who are we to decide how people love, who they love in the privacy of their own homes, or how they dress? It's incomprehensible to me that we fight
Mm-hmm.
over this. It's incomprehensible.
It is. And I share um, the feelings of despair and worry and concern. And I find it is such at times, a tightrope act to hold all of those real feelings of sadness and grief with with the hope, like with the it's hard to do a lot of the time, right? With the hope and trying to get into the larger perspectives of the cosmos, which you actually start your book with, the star and the seed, and this more expansive view. Because when one lasers in, there's a lot of really tough stuff happening all the time on every feed, which we need to pay attention to. And how do we pan out and see where we are in human history, and where are we going, and all the things that people are doing, like what you're doing with your project, with like their so I don't know, I'm feeling what I think you're feeling, and trying to find the words. And I wonder, how do you, I mean, it goes back to, again, we can control, like, there's only so much we could control. There's so much that is out of our control. And yet, many of us feel compelled to want to make a difference, and show up.
Yeah. Well, again, that goes back to, what can we control? Our intentions.
Hmm. Hmm. Our intentions and our behavior
Yeah.
to a degree as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do to keep going? To keep to try to stay grounded, right? To reset when you are knocked off.
I try to stay grounded by putting my hands in the ground.
Yeah, I just walked right into that
Yeah,
one.
it was
Yeah,
great. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you. I tried my traveling helps me do that, and seeing how other people live and what they do and how they create their lives. My pets. I have two
Mhm,
cats and a dog. Certainly, I love my activism, and doing that work is super important to me, and being with my wife, which is my number one thing.
mhm,
Number one.
mhm. Connection,
Love
love, yeah, love, connection, compassion, kindness,
and dirt,
and dirt.
soil.
Wow, that might be some for your merch right there. Wait, love, connection, compassion, kindness, and dirt.
I love that.
Yeah,
Perfect. I love
yeah.
that. Thank
Well,
you. Thank you.
it is grounding though. It is. My wife and I spend a lot of time in our garden, and it is something that we like look forward to, the both from the design element, like loving the aesthetic and the design element, and the nurturing and the producing, to what comes, right. and it's amazing that Sunday we check the squash and we say to ourselves, okay, it's not quite ready. Let's make sure we come back on Tuesday. And then we come back on Wednesday and it's 3 times the size and like, sour, right? It's like the growth of these creatures is just, it's unbelievable.
It really is. Yeah, squash is amazing.
So amazing. And then, okay. So many directions to go. So now I got, since I went on squash, there's Roxane's recipes
Yes.
and then the pictures again, the beauty of the vegetables and the dishes, and there are many, and I pulled out my favorite. We haven't made them yet, but if you can give her my, if you want, what I really was attracted to was the perfect Caesar. I love a Caesar. The tomato galette,
Galette. It's
galette. Oh,
amazing. It's amazing.
amazing. And then we eat a lot of Mediterranean food and have a fondness of that part of the world. And so a Mediterranean-ish stuffed pita dinner.
Oh,
So
so good.
those were my top 3 on,
So
yeah,
good.
yes.
I want
Um,
to show you a photo that I took of my tomato harvest. There's
ah,
a few little cucumbers in there too.
beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous?
That's gorgeous. So yours are already
I
there.
started a little bit earlier this year because I was getting the garden ready for the New York Times photo shoot that was
Hmm.
happening. And so I planted things a little bit earlier than I normally do because I needed to springify so that it would look nice. And so everything is early this year. The peppers were too bitter though. They did grow, but I'm
Mm.
hoping the next crop will be a little bit better.
We love peppers. And I love how I was looking for this other quote because, oh yeah, here it is. Because you planted it early and the tomato still came, and you said, as they say, nature finds a way. Nature finds a way, which made me think of Jurassic Park.
Right.
Life finds a way. But in that you did say like there was a time when nature finds a way, and there was a time when you lost yours.
Oh, all the time, still
Yeah,
losing it every day
yeah,
in different
yeah.
ways, finding it and losing it.
Finding it and losing it. These are the iterations of life. Because we started with meaning and purpose. And as we talk about how life has all of these contours and we find our way, we lose our way, life happens. COVID happened. Loss happens. Um, we experience internal loss of ourself if we go through depression or anxiety. I'm wondering how purpose and meaning cycle for you and the role that it plays in your life as you look back through it.
I don't know that I would say that it cycles so much as it's just an undercurrent that I think about in everything that I undertake. And as I'm getting older and older, I'm in my 60s now, so for me it's very much a question of, do I really want to put my time into something like this? I have, you know, limited amount left, hopefully a lot limited, but still
Mhm.
limited. Do I want to share my energy and my time with this endeavor?
Mhm.
Because I don't want to waste time anymore. I've wasted a lot of time in my life, and I don't want
Mhm.
to do that.
Mhm. Well, interesting coming from a highly productive person that you still feel like that there has been time wasted. I do understand what you're saying,
And
and yeah.
also putting things off, or saying in the future, or I'll do this when, and those are things that don't really work as well to tell yourself when you get into your 60s.
Mhm. Now, it's now. The time is now.
Yeah.
And I think as we all get older, we realize, we hopefully realize, even though it's, I think, against a lot of our human programming, that there are no guarantees. We don't know what's later today or tomorrow, and
Right.
gosh, so challenging to live like that or to stay in it as much as possible.
Yeah.
What did writing this book do for you?
It showed me how I do want to spend my time in the future making art and writing more. And that was a great, in and of itself, that was a great learning because was so happy making this book, being able to sit for 10 hours with not even a sense of time going by as I was writing and drawing and writing and drawing because I was doing them both at the same time. And there was a lot of weaving going on. And it just brought me a great deal of purpose and fulfillment in doing
Hmm.
this. And I thought, oh, I can do this for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And became a possibility.
Many possibilities if we stay open to them.
Yes.
As we close down, let's give a message to, as we think about where we are in humanity and we think about where we are in our evolution and we think about the constant evolution of the garden and the seasons. What is a thought that you would like to leave all of us about how we can be and what we can hope for?
You mentioned at the beginning of Love Letter to a Garden that I talk about the seed kind of containing its entire universe. And I guess we all contain our universes. And if we can learn to be more tolerant of how those universes could work together and play together and coincide and cohabitate, maybe we can make a more beautiful space for people to all be in together. There's enough for everybody if we share.
Yes. Yes. And as you end your book, it says, "We are all here."
We are.
Yeah, we are all
Before,
here.
yeah, let's let's just stop fighting for a few minutes.
Hmm.
See what happens.
Yes. A wish, a prayer, and everything related for everyone, for all of us, for everyone listening, and for us all to know our presence makes a difference. How we show up makes a difference. Our energetic vibration makes a difference. Your smile makes a difference. And those are the things that we can control. And moment to moment, day to day, let's all work on those intentions. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing yourself
Thank
today with
you. What a
us.
beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for making it so special.
Pleasure. And I look forward to all your conversations, the work you're doing, your art, your creativity. I look forward to where this is all going for you. And tell everyone where we can follow what's going on now and what's to come.
Well, I'm pretty much everywhere as Debbie Millman, and my website is debbiemillman.com. And the podcast is at designmattersmedia.com. And yeah, I'm in New York and LA.
You're in New York and LA, and more picture stories, visual stories to come
Yes, absolutely.
with adventure after a rest. Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Dan. Thank
yeah.
you so
Thank
much.
you. I found Debbie to speak with such wisdom and experience, and I found it so grounding and meaningful. And here are 5 key takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, design as healing. Debbie's journey shows us how creativity can be a path to healing and purpose, not just aesthetics. Number 2, surrender versus control. Gardening taught Debbie the radical wisdom of surrendering what we can't control, a powerful lesson for us all. Number 3, turning pain into advocacy. Through her work with the Joyful Heart Foundation, Debbie transforms her own trauma into hope for others. Number 4, the power of purposeful time. At this stage in her life, Debbie is intentional about how she spends her energy and reminds us all to do the same. Think about what matters to you and the value of your precious time. And number 5, we are all seeds. From her book to her philosophy, Debbie encourages us to embrace the universe within us and help cultivate a world rooted in kindness and shared growth. Those are words to leave us with, inspiring words for all of us to cultivate within what we want on the outside. Peace, kindness, harmony, compassion, and dirt. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of our community, for subscribing and your 5-star reviews. Please share this show with anyone and everyone you think will benefit. And remember, we have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.